Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Bryan Gray. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting to unleash your story. And we're going to unleash some wonderful strategy regarding sales. You're going to talk about your new book, The Priority Sale. It's very important because a lot of business owners struggle for years trying to really sell their product, service, or information. And it's the pinnacle of what every business owner needs to know if they want to be successful. But before we go there, share a little bit about your background with our audience.
Yeah. Hi, Christina. Thanks for having me. My name is Bryan Gray. And what's funny, you said we've been struggling for years. Here's some bad news, maybe good news, maybe, that it's going to get even harder as we move forward. So today, during our time together, we're going to uncover some of the things that we need to do differently because selling is going to get even more challenging than before. A bit about me. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've built 2 Inc. 500 businesses in the past. And I'm always fascinated by things that seem to challenge most people. And I just have this blessed curse, if you will, to jump in when things are hard and trying to figure these things out and helping people kind of see through the challenges and create the right kind of breakthroughs and do it in a way that's very solvable and achievable. Because as I mentioned, while selling is going to get much more difficult moving forward, there are some things we can do that will make it easier for us to be successful in a much fast-changing world.
Interesting. Now, when you say sales is going to be hard, do you mean because the economy is kind of upsy daisy right now all over the place, or just because they're learning new information and that makes it a bit harder? Why do you say that?
Yeah, I think the challenge is, it's really funny, this whipsaw effect of the last few months, right? It seems like 2 months ago, we couldn't find enough people and now there are hiring freezes, right? So there's a lot of economic challenges we're dealing with, but what's really driving this change is acceleration. And we could do a whole session on acceleration, which is really not just the rate of change, but the speed of the rate of change is accelerating at the same time. And we're not really prepared for this. So when you think about a salesperson in the past, they were an information distributor, they connected to prospects and they helped educate them. Well, guess what, Christina? We don't need salespeople for that anymore. So we're seeing it more and more difficult for sellers to get access at the levels they really need to be within their prospect account.
All right,
So it's
I'd love
not
to go.
just,
Yeah.
go ahead, sorry.
Share for me. Why don't we need sales reps? What's happened recently? Is it the remote thing that's happened that's caused the?
Not really. Well, remote for sure. But I also think it's the impact of the internet and the ability to do my own self-select, my own education. I don't really want or need to talk to a salesperson. If you think of what most people think of a salesperson, they're just going to talk me into doing something I don't want to do. So I'll just find out what I want to know. And then when I'm ready to buy, right, I'll call up to or reach out to 2 or 3 different companies and have them see if they can best serve my needs. But the problem is 83% of the buying journey is already done before they invite salespeople in. So you're really entering at the worst possible time. They've already lined you up with 2 or 3 other competitors. You all sound, look, and act the same. And if all things look the same, why would I ever pay more? It really launches into what we call the 3 deadly C's, right? The 3 deadly C's are commoditization, compressed selling time, and consensus decision-making. So not only do we wait till the end to bring in salespeople, we now have decision-making teams that average nearly 7 people.
Wow. So so that is really, so when you say condensed time, is that kind of like putting the pressure on to make you more exciting as opposed to the next person? And how do you make yourself stand out from any other salesperson around you?
Yeah, it's really difficult, Christina, when they all think they know what they want, right? Because by the time they're starting to shop around now, right? They know what they want. They kind of know what they want to spend. Now it's really that they call it that bake off. We call it the race to the bottom. When you're all the same, why would I ever pay more? And you have these salespeople trying to differentiate themselves at the worst time. The only way to really solve this is to be in much earlier in that buying journey and at a higher level. So whereas today sellers are being brought in at the last minute and becoming commoditized, we now need to get access and create influence at a much higher level within your prospect organization. That's probably the biggest challenge that sellers and organizations will face moving forward.
So what I'm gathering, though, might make that you can get into the process earlier is really building that network that you keep going, and really just is it just connecting more and more with people and seeing where they're at with their business and how you might solve their problem before they even ask.
Okay, you're exactly right with that second part, right? How can we
Mhm.
be a solution before they even think they need something, right?
Mhm.
Because the only way you can create value as a salesperson now is to be able to connect to the real priority. And
Mhm.
priorities are really commitments to make my threats go away. We don't need to go into the brain science of this, but the fact is, our primitive brain, which is our deciding brain, is insanely focused on making threats go away. And those become our priorities. So
Mhm.
we have to, as salespeople, be able to get someone's attention much earlier in the buying journey. And in many cases, Christina, it's all about solving or helping them be aware of a challenge before they think they know what they need.
Mm. What's very interesting about this, Brian, is I think a lot of businesses out there, whether they're Googling and trying to figure things out themselves, I think a lot of times they don't even know what their problem is because, like, look, you got this hurt toe. I'll go to Google Med and have them tell me what's going on. Well, you're not a doctor that's been in medical school for 10 plus years. So you might think I got the best course of action, as the same goes with the business owner who thinks I know exactly what I need next. But do you really? Because you've not had the training that a seasoned salesperson would have.
That's exactly right. So just because they're ready to make a buy or make a
Mm.
decision, they've entered at what we call the procurement phase. They think they know what they
Mhm.
want. It may be the wrong thing, but it's
Uh-huh.
so hard to reverse course at that point, right? Because you
Mm.
can't turn everything around. So what you're stuck with is competing as two or three other companies, and it's just way too late. The challenge, to your point about the hurt toe, is how do we help people become aware of aching body parts before they even know they have an issue, right? And how can we become more of a consultative type person to help them
Mhm.
steer through the right decision? Because just because you're 80% through the buying journey, to your point, you
Mm.
may not have the right solution in mind.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I'm guessing because there's things that have happened to me by chance. Like I'm out and about, and they'll say, "Oh, what do you do? You have a podcast? Oh, tell me more about it." And there's that random connection, but you never know when you're making that connection that could go somewhere. So, to that, what do you suggest when salespeople are out there? Do they just get out there more and talk to more people, or strategically look for people that would be the people that can best help? Where do they start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the most important thing that sales teams have to do is they have to understand the real impact of what they do. They have
Mhm.
to be able to introduce themselves to a complete stranger and
Mhm.
build trust quickly, which is hard. And we'll talk about that in a minute, right?
Mhm.
Because if you understand your real impact and you can communicate your value in a way that
Mm.
connects with your ideal prospect's priority, it's not hard to understand this. If I want to call on CFOs, it's best for me to understand what a CFO, what she carries with her throughout the day that become her challenges or threats. And if I best
Mm.
understand those, it's up to me then to connect my real impact to what
Mm.
her real underlying drag around from meeting to meeting threats that I face. And I introduce myself in a way that shares
Mm.
beliefs like that's exactly what I've been thinking about. I didn't know that you could help, that there's a solution for this. So it's a
Mm.
little more challenging than introducing yourselves and telling people what you do. It's all
Yeah.
about sharing why you do what you do and create a mutual belief earlier in the journey.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I think people are so used to saying, I'm a plumber. That's what I do. I plumber." But, it's so much deeper than that because there could be a billion different plumbers, accountants, whatever. But you want to get to the nitty-gritty. You're talking to a CEO. Uh, is cash flow your issue? I cut the company that I last worked 50% receivables. That's what I do. I walk in and see their processes and cut their receivables in
Absolutely.
half. Boom. Oh, I love that. Show me how you do that.
Because it's always on my mind at that right
Mhm.
position. So it's really important to understand the continual relentless threats that the person you're calling on is faced with. And I want that to
Mm.
be one or two levels above where you normally call,
Mm.
which creates a lot of anxiety and risk because we tell people you need to be in earlier to higher level, but I don't know what to say. Why
Mm.
don't we start by understanding what people like Christina, what her challenges and threats are, and
Mhm.
then provide a compelling way to share an idea. We believe, in fact, our elevator pitches, we believe the biggest current threat you face, Christina, is becoming a commodity in your prospect's eyes. And what's making it worse? Decision-making teams are getting bigger than ever. They're ignoring
Mm.
your salespeople to the very end of the buying journey. It's driving a race to the bottom caused
Yeah.
by the 3 deadly C's. And what happens is a CEO will say, oh my God, that's exactly what's happening to us. We're stuck at the end. And they start sharing these challenges because they happen to believe the same things you believe.
Mm.
But you
Yeah.
have to really understand the real impact of what you're doing. And something I'm personally fascinated with is something as simple as DocuSign. And I use this as an example, right? So we've also
Uh-huh.
the DocuSign documents. I'm
Mhm.
sure there are some salespeople within Adobe that say, hey, DocuSign makes signing contracts easier, right? It makes it convenient. It's easy. It's in your email box. But if I wanted to call on a CFO, you know the real impact of DocuSign? You know what it
Mm.
really does for organizations?
Seals the deal.
Well, see, yeah, that's good. And it creates better cash flow. How many
Well,
times have
yeah.
you sent an agreement to somebody?
Mhm.
Christine, I need to get to it. Give me a couple of days. I need to print it out and review it, and I'll scan it and send it back to you. And then days become weeks, right?
Mhm.
Versus DocuSign, it shows up in your inbox. You click 2 buttons and you're
Boom.
committed.
Yeah.
So you take weeks out of the cash flow cycle, but most wouldn't think of something like DocuSign worthy of calling on a CFO
Mhm.
with. But
Yeah.
if you
Oh
understand the
my
challenge,
gosh.
you can
Yeah, I
connect
love
the real
Docu.
impact.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you brought that example up because I love DocuSign. When I've had contracts I've had to do with individuals, it's such a great tool to get it over there. They get over here. We both have the signed contract. We're ready to go. So yeah, it's a wonderful tool. Now you mentioned something really interesting, and I hope I remember here. You were saying you need to reach people a level or two above. Now, does that mean what does that look like? Share
Yeah,
that.
it's so when you think about the 83% of the buying journey is done, that means
Mhm.
it's been usually turned over to a buying committee or a decision committee. And the real decision maker, he or she has left the scene, right? They,
Mm.
they identify the priorities, they plan for the purchase, and they get a buying committee together. And that buying committee is going to interview 2 or 3 companies, and they're going to create a rubric, and they're going to
Mhm.
check who does more of this and says less of that. And they're saying, this is the one we choose.
Okay.
But the person you really want to talk to is the person who set the priority in the first place, weeks, if not months before that. They're usually
Mm.
higher up in the organization and they're not prone to meet with salespeople.
Ah.
So the challenge, if you want to win priority, because I'll tell you one thing, with every prospective organization, they're currently kicking around 17 to 18 great ideas,
Mm.
all with a fantastic ROI, all promising to improve their lives and do all these things. But
Mm.
an organization only has enough time, energy, and resources to act on 2 or 3 of those. What gets
Mhm.
acted on? Those things that are priorities. So if you understand your real impact and you can connect that to a priority, you now need to meet with someone well in advance, to your point earlier, well in advance of them even being aware of having an issue.
Wow.
They're usually higher level, tucked away. So
Yeah.
guess what, Christina? They're not going to networking events, right? They're not easily accessible. So you better have a hot take and you better have the right insights, which to me, insights are explanations to why things are happening to me. We call ours are the
Mm.
3 deadly C's.
Yeah.
Why am I struggling with sales? The 3 deadly C's. Oh, that makes sense. We do feel like we're commoditized. We are getting in a room full of 7 people and it's hard to win them all over. And once you
Yeah.
have these insights, then you can create what we call, well, we call it an elevator. Everybody calls it an elevator pitch. We call it a quick pitch, but it's just that real quick trust
Boom.
builder by saying, wow, I believe the same thing. That's
Mhm.
exactly what's happening to me. And when you can build trust with someone in less than 30 seconds, you can now have a real conversation with that higher level decision maker.
I this is really fascinating. I recall many years ago, there was something I wanted to do in my early 20s. I wanted to work with children with autism. My friend was a psychologist. She talked endlessly about this. And I was like, I would like to volunteer and help out. But she didn't work in a school. She was just a psychologist. But she invited me not too long after that to a party where there was a whole bunch of psychologists. And I'm walking around the room. And of course, at the time, I had just gotten my very first job, which had nothing to do with psychology or anything in that field.
Yep.
But I started to talk to people and they said, "So tell us about yourself. What do you do?" And I think at the time I worked in the mailroom. And I said, "Yeah, but I've been really fascinated about my friend talking about autism. I'd really like to, volunteer in some fashion." And I think it was halfway through the night, one of the psychologists says, "I work for an organization. They're really in need of respite workers. I'll call them on Monday. Monday I got there, she introduced me to her friend, and I got hired a couple hours later.
Awesome.
But what I'm getting is that sometimes people think you have to sit on LinkedIn for hours and talk to random strangers. Sometimes it's just that getting out there and not being scared to get outside of yourself and just talk to people. People know people. Everyone knows at least 100 people. And you could just find that connection you're needing or
Absolutely.
help.
And that's a great story. And I think that's whether we call it the fortune favors the bold, right? Because you had to have it in you to reach out and say, this is what I want to do, or this is what I'm
Mhm.
fascinated by.
Mm,
But if you understand your real impact, it's easy to say, we're looking for organizations. I'm looking for organizations who are struggling to get earlier access, who believe they're being commoditized, who believe they create
mm.
more value than what the
Yeah.
prospect's appreciating. So and I think the problem is people don't know how to start a real discussion with someone that makes
Mm.
them feel better understood.
Yes, yes, because you know what it is? It's so much about me, me, me. What do oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, the best product ever. Instead of saying, let me just hear about you. And then, when I mention, oh, and they say to me, so what's your fascination? It's not coming from the premise of give me something. It's just coming from, I'm curious. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's the key to really making those connections instead of doing, hey, I do accounting. I could take care of all your accounting needs. And like, go away, step
Well,
back. Yeah.
absolutely, because Trina, they're probably having their accounting needs met now, whether it's right or wrong. It's
Mhm,
being done, so you don't need to be one of another of many. But I'm
mhm,
sure there are some real threats and challenges you can address that probably aren't being met properly. And if we
mhm,
best understand those, we can say we work with organizations who may have an accounting service, but they're finding this, or they've had an accounting service, but they're not getting this. So we
mm,
got to create these gaps between what they're currently getting and the impact of what you can create that creates the right kind of conversation. It allows you to have some degree of boldness, which is what
mm.
it requires for an introvert like me to introduce himself to a complete stranger at a party. Believe it or not, that's one of the hardest things in the world for me is to introduce myself to a complete stranger in a social setting.
Yeah, yeah, I think a lot of people would agree. It's not the
Yeah.
funnest place for a lot of people. Well, we could go on for many hours, but I want them to go out and get a copy of your book, Brian Gray, The Priorities. Oh, let me see a copy. The
The
Priority
priority
Sale.
sale.
Awesome.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
Very good.
And where can they find out more about you and get a copy of your book? Where can they do that?
Yeah, please. The priority sale is to me, it's really the only book developed for a
Mhm,
world. You mentioned this earlier about Zoom meetings and remote work, and not everybody's in the same room to make decisions anymore. It's really the first book on how to deal with larger decision making teams where they're going to
mm,
ignore you to the very end of the buying journey and they think you're all the same. So it really gives you a how to guide to compete in a world where it's going to be more and more difficult to sell. Follow me on LinkedIn, right? Just go to LinkedIn, Brian Gray, the author of The Priority Sale, or go to our website, www. What do you have to say www anymore? RevenuePathGroup.com, RevenuePathGroup.com. And you'll see the book, The Priority Sale. Go there. They'll have information on where to get a copy. We'd love you to read. We'd love to hear feedback from anyone, but also reach out to have any questions. It's been a pleasure joining you.
you bet.
Let me know if I can help.
Yeah, I loved this conversation, and I know you're going to spark interest because who doesn't want to get their business growing, whether you're a salesperson or not? Maybe you're a business owner going, maybe I do need some help. And Brian can help you find the salespeople, or you can find out how you can sell better yourself. So, Brian Gray, I just have to thank you again for coming to Savvy Broadcasting and sharing your great wisdom today. Thank you.
Christina, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
You betcha. You too.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.